This is the shocking case of Emily Carter, a 25-year-old Texas wife who walked away from her husband Daniel and chased the promise of a new life with a man she believed was a Dubai Sheikh. Just 1 month later, only half of her body was discovered in the desert sands. What really happened to Emily, and who was behind her brutal end? Stay active with us till the end as we break down every chilling twist in her story. And if you love deep dives into true crime mysteries, don't forget to support the channel and hit that subscribe button so you never miss the cases we uncover next. Emily Carter grew up in a quiet Texas town where nothing much ever changed. The roads stretched long and flat, bordered by faded billboards and family-owned diners that had been there for decades. She married her high school sweetheart, Daniel, at just 21. To the outside world, theirs looked like a perfect small-town love story. They lived in a modest house with a porch swing, attended Sunday church, and shared meals at the same diner where they had their first date. But behind Emily's warm smile lived a restlessness that grew sharper with every passing year. She wanted more than routine. While Daniel was content working construction and coming home to barbecues and football games, Emily spent her nights scrolling through her phone. Her screen was a window into a world she could only dream of: glamorous women draped in diamonds, sipping cocktails on private yachts, vacationing in cities she could barely pronounce. Dubai, Paris, Milan. These names lit up her imagination and filled her with both longing and envy. In her journal, she wrote about chasing a life that sparkled brighter than her own. She told herself she wasn't ungrateful, but deep down she felt trapped. Her marriage, her job at a small boutique, and the town's endless familiarity pressed down on her like a weight she couldn't shake off. Friends thought she was lucky to have stability, yet Emily feared she would wither if she stayed. Every day, the divide between the life she had and the life she wanted grew wider, until it seemed impossible to ignore. What Emily didn't realize was that her hunger for escape would lead her not toward freedom, but into the darkest corners of danger. It began with a single notification that appeared late at night while Emily scrolled through her favorite social media app. A direct message from an account she had never seen before caught her attention. The profile radiated wealth. Images of golden palaces, exotic cars lined in polished rows, and glistening yachts docked against sapphire waters. The man behind the account introduced himself as a Dubai Sheikh, someone who moved in circles of unimaginable privilege. His words were elegant, wrapped in charm, and they seemed to reach directly into the part of Emily that longed for more. She felt as if the universe had finally answered her silent wishes. At first, she told herself it was harmless. She replied politely, curious more than anything else. But the more he spoke, the more enchanted she became. He painted pictures of a life where she would never know struggle again, where she would live in mansions, wear gowns custom-made by designers, and travel to islands untouched by ordinary tourists. He spoke of devotion, insisting that he had chosen her for reasons even she couldn't understand. His attention felt intoxicating, a bright contrast to the simple affection she had grown used to at home. Within days, their conversations became routine. Emily woke up eager to see his messages and went to bed rereading his promises. The life she once thought was her only option now looked dull and colorless in comparison. She began to imagine herself in his world, believing every word, every promise, every dream he placed before her. What seemed like a chance encounter was carefully designed, and Emily was already too captivated to see the trap closing around her. Daniel never expected his world to collapse in silence. One ordinary morning, he rolled over in bed and reached for Emily, only to find the space beside him cold and empty. At first, he thought she had risen early to make coffee or take a walk. But when he called her name and no answer came, a wave of unease stirred inside him. The closet door was left ajar, half her clothes missing. The jewelry box she treasured since childhood was gone too. On the dresser, where her wedding ring usually rested at night, sat the plain gold band, abandoned as if it no longer held meaning. As hours passed, his confusion turned into desperation. He drove to her boutique job, but her manager hadn't seen her. Friends knew nothing. Her parents were just as shocked when he called them. Emily had not mentioned plans to anyone. The thought of her running away felt impossible, yet the evidence in front of him told a different story. Airline records confirmed his worst fear. She had booked a one-way ticket overseas, and by the time he discovered it, she was already on foreign soil. Daniel reported her disappearance, but investigators quickly concluded she had left of her own will. There were no signs of a struggle, no forced entry, no ransom note. To the law, it wasn't a crime. It was simply a woman making her own choice. For Daniel, it was abandonment, a betrayal that left him both heartbroken and bewildered. While the town whispered rumors about why she had left, he was left with nothing but unanswered questions and the hollow ring of silence inside their home. For a short while, Emily's new life seemed like a fairy tale brought to life. Her social media feeds lit up with images that dazzled her followers back home. She posed in glittering gowns, perched on marble staircases, and clutched handbags that cost more than Daniel earned in a year. She was photographed beside champagne bottles taller than her, and always with a backdrop of wealth, sleek cars, luxury suites, glittering skylines. From the outside, it appeared that Emily had finally found the glamorous life she always craved. Her friends back in Texas scrolled through her posts with shock, envy, and confusion. But behind the glossy photos, there was something unsettling. Emily's smile, once bright and natural, now appeared strained. Observers noticed her eyes often looked elsewhere, never directly into the camera, as if she were distracted or uneasy. The settings themselves seemed oddly incomplete. Photos were carefully cropped, showing only fragments. The corner of an opulent chandelier, a gold armrest, or the blurred reflection of someone just outside the frame. It was as though she was being allowed glimpses of luxury, but never full freedom within it. The rapid pace of her images also raised questions. One day she seemed to be in a penthouse, the next in an isolated desert villa, then inside what looked like a lavish hotel suite. The locations changed so quickly it felt less like a vacation and more like constant movement, as if she were being shuffled from place to place. Still, Emily continued to post, keeping up the illusion of abundance. What her followers couldn't see was that each photo carried hints of control, as if she were no longer the one deciding where she went or what she shared. Then, just as suddenly as her new life had appeared, it vanished. After 2 weeks of constant activity, Emily's social media fell silent. No new posts, no stories, no updates of glittering cars or hotel suites. For her followers, the absence felt strange at first, but when days turned into weeks, concern began to grow. The young woman who had once shared every detail of her life now seemed to have disappeared altogether. Back in Texas, her family noticed the silence immediately. Her mother's calls went unanswered, her siblings' messages never delivered. Even Daniel, still reeling from her sudden departure, checked her accounts compulsively, hoping for signs that she was safe. Instead, he was met with nothing, an empty feed where once she had flaunted her new world. For those who cared about her, the silence carried more weight than any words could. Authorities were contacted again, but their response remained cold. They pointed out that Emily had chosen to leave voluntarily. She had bought her own ticket, boarded her own plane, and publicly displayed her happiness abroad. To them, there was no evidence of danger. Without proof of foul play, their hands were tied. But Daniel refused to believe it was that simple. To him, Emily's silence was louder than any confession. She had been addicted to sharing her life, constantly seeking validation and admiration. To stop posting entirely was not just unusual, it was unthinkable. Something was wrong, and he knew it. As the days stretched on, his fear hardened into certainty. Emily wasn't living her dream anymore. Somewhere far from home, she was in trouble, and no one seemed willing to see it but him. The discovery came not in a bustling city, but in the stillness of the desert. A group of joggers, accustomed to running along the outskirts of Dubai where the sand stretched endlessly toward the horizon, stumbled upon something that stopped them in their tracks. Half buried in the dunes lay a human torso, mangled but unmistakably real. The runners alerted authorities, and within hours the area swarmed with investigators, their vehicles leaving deep tracks in the soft sand. Forensic teams worked carefully, documenting every detail. The body had been severed cleanly at the waist, dressed in what remained of an expensive designer blouse. It was a gruesome sight that contrasted sharply against the golden landscape. Identification came quickly. DNA testing confirmed the remains belonged to Emily Carter, the young woman from Texas whose sudden departure had baffled her community only a month before. News of the discovery spread fast, shocking both her family in America and the growing number of followers who had been captivated by her online transformation. The girl who had once flaunted diamonds and luxury was now reduced to half a body in a foreign desert. The gruesome condition of the remains suggested something far darker than an accident. Authorities speculated she had been killed elsewhere and her torso abandoned deliberately, left in a place where discovery was inevitable. The other half of her body was nowhere to be found. This absence created a chilling sense of incompleteness, as though her story had been violently cut in two. For Daniel and Emily's family, the news delivered devastation beyond words. Closure seemed impossible. Instead, they were left with horror, questions, and the haunting mystery of what had really happened to the rest of her. As investigators began to dig deeper into Emily's final weeks, the polished image of the Dubai Sheikh unraveled almost instantly. The wealth that had dazzled her on social media turned out to be nothing but smoke and mirrors. The private jets he flaunted were stolen images from magazines, the gold-plated cars pulled from the feeds of genuine royals, and the lavish mansions borrowed from online real estate listings. There was no prince, no billionaire, no man of influence. Only a carefully constructed mask designed to lure women like Emily into a trap. The person behind the profile was a con artist with an extensive criminal network that stretched across borders. Authorities discovered connections to human trafficking operations, schemes that promised glamorous lifestyles but ended in exploitation and violence. Emily's communications with him revealed how methodically she had been manipulated. His promises had grown bolder over time, shifting from gifts and travel to a full transformation of her life. She believed she was chosen, singled out for a rare opportunity, when in reality, she was one of many being groomed. Investigators traced her final movements to a villa on the city's edge, rented under a false identity. Surveillance footage captured her arrival, but never her departure. By the time police searched the property, it had been stripped bare. No furniture, no personal items, no evidence of who had been there. The walls were spotless, as if scrubbed to erase any trace of her presence. Every lead ended in shadow. Each name, each account, each phone number dissolved as quickly as it appeared. Emily had fallen into a carefully woven web, and once inside, there had been no way out. With Emily's death confirmed, investigators turned their attention toward the people who might have been involved. At first, suspicion naturally fell on Daniel. In many cases, the spouse is the first to be questioned, and his heartbreak was scrutinized under a microscope. Detectives combed through his phone records, bank accounts, and work logs, searching for anything that suggested involvement. But nothing surfaced. Daniel's life was an open book, his grief undeniable, and his alibi airtight. Once cleared, he shifted from suspect to victim. Left with the hollow knowledge that his wife's choices had led her into danger he could never have imagined. Attention then shifted back overseas. The so-called Sheikh, who had drawn Emily into his orbit, became the prime suspect, yet even that lead proved slippery. Every trace of his digital existence had been carefully engineered. The accounts vanished overnight. Bank records were tied to shell companies in countries with no extradition agreements, and the villa where Emily had last been seen offered no usable evidence. Witnesses who might have provided answers either disappeared or denied any knowledge. The case grew more sinister with each dead end. Authorities whispered about larger networks, powerful figures who profited from women like Emily and had the resources to erase trails whenever necessary. Some investigators believed her killing was a warning, staged deliberately to discourage others from prying too deeply. Others speculated she had been sold into something even darker, her partial remains left as a grim illusion of closure. The truth hovered just beyond reach, hidden by shadows, money, and influence. For those left behind, the most painful reality was that justice seemed increasingly impossible. Years have passed, yet the mystery of Emily Carter's final days has never been solved. Only half of her body was ever recovered, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. Without the missing remains, forensic experts could not determine the full extent of her injuries or even establish a precise cause of death. The desert became both her grave and her riddle, swallowing evidence that could have brought clarity. For her family in Texas, the absence of truth was almost as painful as the loss itself. They held funerals, But the service felt incomplete, a ceremony for only part of a daughter, sister, and wife. Daniel lived under the shadow of unanswered questions. He was haunted not only by the brutal way Emily's life ended, but also by the choices that led her to leave. He replayed their final months together, wondering if he could have stopped her, if he had missed signs of her growing restlessness. The torment of what if became a prison of its own. He had been cleared by investigators, yet whispers in the town never fully faded. To some, he would always be the husband whose wife left and returned only in pieces. Online, Emily's story became a cautionary tale, spreading across forums and true crime discussions. Some viewed her as a victim of manipulation, others as reckless for chasing a fantasy. Regardless of opinion, her case symbolized the dangers of blind trust in strangers promising a dream life. The so-called Sheikh was never found, and his network remains active in the shadows. Emily's story lingers unfinished, a chilling reminder of how desire can blur judgment, and how some mysteries are destined to remain unsolved.